Hi, y'all. So I recently got this question and I want to do a whole video on it because I want y'all to understand the difference between the Affidavit of Support income requirement and the money in the bank requirement for the non-immigrant visas, for B2 visa, for student visa. Completely different requirements. We're going to be talking about that in this video. I am U.S. immigration attorney Lilian Chukwurah, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenship for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. At this point, I have done a couple videos on my channel about the Affidavit of Support income requirements, but for some reason, something is still not clear. So let's clear it up. When you're thinking about the Affidavit of Support, really, it's about how much money you make, not how much money you have in the bank. Unless you're trying to use the amount of money you have in the bank to say that you don't need the income. When it comes to the Affidavit of Support, it's really important to note that the main thing that USCIS is looking at is how much money do you make a year, right? They look at your tax returns, your W-2s, if you're working, your profit and loss statement, if you are self-employed. They really look at a whole lot of things that you can use to prove that you are making this income on a yearly basis. If you are not able to meet the income requirement, though, just know you can use assets. So that's where maybe people are being confused between the income requirement and the amount of money you have in your bank account, right? If you do not have enough income from a job, from a self-employment to meet that requirement, if your 1040, your tax return doesn't show enough income, you may want to look at your assets, and your bank account is an asset. So if you don't meet that income requirement and you want to use your bank account as an asset, that's where you want to look at how much money do I have in my bank account, right? That's where that matters. So let's start with income, okay? How much income do you actually need? Because that's where everything starts. How much income do you need? And to know how much income you need to know your household size, because that determines how much income USCIS is going to require you to have. The higher your household size, the higher the income requirement is going to be. So if you are just you and your spouse that you're filing for, that is a household of 2. Now, if you have children, each of those children count as 1. So, for example, if you are filing for your spouse and it's just the 2 of you, that would be a household of 2. So your income needs to be enough to meet the income requirement for a household of 2. If your income does not meet the requirement for a household of 2, then you need to do one of 2 things. Either have assets that meet that income requirement, or you can have a joint sponsor. If you want to use your assets, remember that your assets has to be 3 times the difference between your income and the required income for your household size. So you are not actually required to have any specific amount of money in your bank account for filing for a family member, right? Again, the confusion here is that when you are filing a non-immigrant visa, if you're filing for a B2 visa, if you're filing for an F1 visa, there is an income requirement. You have to have enough funds to fund your time in the US, to pay for school, to pay for your housing, to pay for your flight, to pay for the hotel you're going to stay at. Whatever it is that you're planning on doing in the US, in those non-immigrant visas, you need to show that you or a sponsor has enough money, enough income to cover that. And that's where it matters how much money is in the bank account. Because if, let's say, the school that you want to go to as an F1 student costs $40,000 a year, and your sponsor only has $20,000 in their bank account, that's going to be a problem, right? So that's where the amount of money in your actual bank account matters. But for an immigrant visa, which is where you need that affidavit of support, the I-864, your income, how much money you make a year is what they're looking at, not how much money you have in your bank account. So it's really good to keep those two things clear and know that they are separate things. Like I said before, if your income, the amount of money you make a year, is less than the amount of money that's required for your household size, you can use your bank account as an asset, depending on how much money you have in your bank account. Remember, the difference between your income and the amount that USCIS requires of you, your assets needs to be 3 times that. So if the required income is $30,000 and you make $20,000, that means there's a $10,000 difference. For your bank account to count as assets enough to cover the difference, you need to have $30,000 in your bank account. Because remember, the asset needs to be 3 times the difference between your income and the required income. If your income is enough, you do not need to show your bank statements, right? This is something that people struggle with. And I always have to explain it to my clients that your bank account, we don't need. We need your tax returns. And if we see that, your income is just not enough, then we can talk about your bank account. We don't start at how much money you have in your bank account. We start at how much total income do you have showing on your tax returns? How much money do you make from your job? That's where we start. And if that money is not enough, then we can look at bank accounts. But USCIS and the embassy do not require you to have a certain amount of money in your bank account in order to file an I-864. So I really hope this is clearer to you. This is just something that I know people struggle with. And I get these questions when I'm doing my live or as comments in a video. And I just want to make sure that I am, being responsible and responding to these so that you are not scared to start the process, right? Because when you're thinking about, oh my goodness, I have to have like 20,000 in a bank account before I can even start, that stops you, right? That stops you from even starting the process, not knowing you're looking at the completely wrong requirements, right? So make sure that you are not stopping yourself from starting a process that you actually qualify for. And that leads me to what I always tell people. If you are not sure that you meet the requirements, if you want to make sure that you meet the requirements and see if we can help you with the process so that you don't have to think about whether you meet the requirements or not, it's up to me to tell you what the requirements are and if you meet it. And if you don't, alternatives that we can use to make sure that you meet the requirements. If you would like to schedule a free strategy session with me to find out what process you're qualified for and how I can help you with that, remember, this strategy session is free because I want to make sure that you are on the right track and you are getting the right information that's specific to you and your particular situation. And if we can help you with that, that is great as well. To schedule a strategy session with me, go to my website, lilylegal.com, click on Contact Us, and you will be able to select the date and time that works best for you for us to talk about your situation.